The charge at Sheria took place on the 7th of November 1917 during the Battle of Hareira and Sheria, when the 11th and 12th Light Horse Regiments charged a Yildirim Army Group rearguard in support of an attack by the 60th Division during the Southern Palestine Offensive of the Sinai and Palestine Campaign in World War I. Following the victory at the Battle of Beersheba on the 31st of October, Ottoman Army forces continued to hold most of the front lines stretching from Gaza on the Mediterranean coast to Sheria and Tel el-Khuweilfe in the Judean Hills to the north of Beersheba. A major offensive launched by the Egyptian Expeditionary Force on the 6th of November could not dislodge the Ottoman defenders at Gaza, Hareira and Tel el-Khuweilfe. Although Sheria and Tel el-Khuweilfe continued to be strongly defended, the heavy EEF bombardment by the 21st Corps against Gaza resulted in the Ottoman garrison withdrawing from Gaza during the night. During the 7th of November, the attack by the 20th Corps, led by the 60th Division and supported by the 10th Division on the left and the 74th Division on the right, gained some ground in the morning but was held up by a strong position at Sheria, when the Australian Mounted Division was ordered to attack mounted. The 11th and 12th Light Horse Regiments charged into the face of heavy artillery, machine gun and rifle fire, was forced to stop and dismount as the fire was too fierce. One troop missed the signal and was annihilated after they charged up and over the Ottoman trenches. Background: during the stalemate from April to October 1917, the EEF front line extended for 22 miles from the Mediterranean coast at Gaza to a point on the Wadi Gaza near El Gamli, about 14 miles southwest of Sheria and 18 miles west of Beersheba on the southern edge of the plain of Philistia. The official rifle strength of the EEF on the 28th of October 1917 was 80,000 in the infantry divisions and Imperial Camel Brigade, and 15,000 cavalry. However, the actual strength, about 60,000 and 12,000 respectively. The strength of the EEF infantry, as compared with the Ottoman defenders, was a ratio of 2 to 1, while cavalry was 8 to 1 and guns were about 3 to 2. While the Ottoman defenders had developed Gaza into a strong modern fortress, complete with a glacis on its southern and southeastern side, permanent strongly entrenched and wired positions were constructed to Shelal on the Wadi Gaza, with both Sheria and Beersheba particularly strongly fortified. The estimated strength of the Ottoman force holding the Gaza to Beersheba line was 40,000 rifles. This was actually 33,000 rifles, 1,400 sabres and 260 guns. The main Ottoman position, extending from the Mediterranean shore west of Gaza to southeast of Tel esh-Sheria, was held by the 20th Corps commanded by Ali Fobe. Prelude: after the capture of Beersheba, although the Ottoman defenders suffered many casualties, stubborn fighting continued against strong Ottoman rearguards, which delayed an EEF breakthrough for 7 days. Strong Ottoman garrisons and rearguards continued to hold the Tel Khuweilfe area, Sheria, and Gaza, along with western part of the front line including Tank and Atawana redoubts. However, the once formidable Gaza-Beersheba line was becoming vulnerable, and at dawn on the 6th of November 3 divisions of Chetwode's 20th Corps attacked on a broad front about the center of the Ottoman defensive line, along with the main attack towards Tel esh-Sheria in the center of the line. Tel el-Khuweilfe on the eastern end of the line was also attacked by the EEF on the 6th of November. This fighting caused the Yildirim Army Group Ottoman to reinforce the center and eastern extremity of their front line. During the 6th of November, the EEF had advanced about 9 miles, capturing a series of strong enemy works covering a front of some 7 miles. Quote, Although the Wadi Sheria had not been crossed, only Tel Sheria and the main Hareira redoubts remained in Ottoman hands overnight. Falkenhayn, commanding Yildirim Army Group, realized that the Ottoman forces could not hold the EEF much longer, and he ordered the 7th and 8th Armies to withdraw about 10 kilometers. The heavy EEF bombardment of the Ottoman defenses in the Gaza area, which had begun on the 27th of October, intensifying during the night of 5/6 November to a maximum on the 6th of November, resulted in the Gaza garrison evacuating the town during the night of 6/7 November. Ottoman units of the 26th Division at Khuweife, along with units from the Hareira redoubt garrison, were withdrawn to form a reserve of no more than about 1,000 men, after all the 7th and 8th Armies reserve had been committed. Referred to as the Zahilaka Group, they concentrated at the central position of Khuweife to the north of Hareira and Sheria. After the 60th Division had captured Sheria Station at 1750 on the 6th of November, the small in number but fresh Zahilaka Group was committed during the evening to reinforce the 16th Ottoman Division defending the Wadi Sheria. Chetwood issued orders during the night for the 10th Division to capture the Hareira redoubt, and for the 60th Division to transfer from the 20th Corps to the Desert Mounted Corps. Chauvel ordered the 60th Division to capture Tel el-Sheria and then advance to Huj. A reconnaissance of the Ottoman positions at Sheria was carried out by the 181st Brigade, with a view to crossing the Wadi at two places to capture the high ground stretching from Barata to the railway. The commander of a machine gun section of the 180th Machine Gun Company describes coming under heavy fire at about 4 o'clock. Walk across the open under shell, M.G. and rifle fire. Battle of machine guns v. Machine guns depend entirely on the coolness of each individual gunner. Meanwhile, the 74th Division took up a position on the right of the 60th Division. The 230th Brigade was ordered not to advance across the Wadi Sheria, nor extend the right to the Kh. Barata, until touch with the 60th Division could be established. As touch could not be established, they remained in position during the night. Chauvel ordered the ANZAC and Australian Mounted Divisions to begin their advance northwards to establish a line from Jemama to Huj the next day. All arms were to advance strongly and decisively to capture as many of the Ottoman forces as possible. The Australian Mounted Division left the Wadi Hanna Fish, Kh. at 2:30 and was concentrated 3 miles southwest of Tel Sheria by 7:30, when the 5th Mounted Brigade rejoined the division and the 7th Mounted Brigade returned to Desert Mounted Corps Reserve. Up at 2 o'clock on the 7th of November and hurried on. Moved fast till dawn, when we crossed the Beersheba Gaza Jerusalem railway line. Everyone rushing on, pushing on, hurrying on, staff cars, wireless, transports, camels, mounted troops, Australian and yeomanry, infantry, artillery, donkeys, mules, horses and camels galore, without end. Turks retiring fast, artillery firing all the time, and we move up just within range and halt. Then an hour or two later we move on and repeat the process. The Turks are pulling back all the time and the big guns are keeping us back. Our guns also blazing away all the time. Then moved through deserted Turkish lines, bivvies, tents, camps, hospitals, ammunition dumps, dead horses and discarded equipment in every direction, all along the track. Came into rougher country about midday and crossed the Wadi. As we moved up, came under direct artillery fire. High explosive shells exploding just ahead. Got down into a wadi just in time. Here we were heavily shelled for about half an hour. We stopped by a just-captured bakery, and the more hardy walked around and helped themselves to hot, fresh bread, while others lay under the wadi bank as close as they could get, and listened to the shells whistling overhead. Location of the Sheria position. The 12th Light Horse Regiment was informed at about 7:30 that the Sheria position had been captured by the 60th London Division, and that the Ottoman garrison was retiring northwards. Hill was stormed at 4:30 next morning and carried at the point of the bayonet. However, the Londoners' advance was stopped by a strongly entrenched Ottoman rearguard position 1.5 miles to the north, with excellent vantage over their approach across bare sloping ground. The Londoners took up a defensive position about 1,000 yards from this Ottoman rearguard position, while the Ottoman rearguard had withdrawn to a line about 1.5 miles to the north on a long gentle bare slope leading up from the wadi on the extreme flank of the Ottoman defences. Here they reformed and dug in on a strong position with an excellent zone of fire sweeping the slope with shrapnel, machine guns and rifle fire. The check to the Londoners on the slope beyond Sheria seriously hampered the success of the British plan. It meant a day's delay at least to Shay's advance towards Huj. The Light Horse Regiments were then ordered to make a mounted attack on a redoubt defended by machine guns, rifles, and covered from behind by a big gun. They were to ride across open, bare and absolutely barren approach without any cover, to charge straight in on the redoubt at the gallop. A situation report at 1440 located the battle to the north of Sheria Hospital, 1 mile north of Tel El Sheria. Yet the position was attacked and captured by 2 battalions which crossed the Wadi Sheria at 1700. Plan of attack. Chauvel issued orders to the Australian Mounted Division at 8:05 to advance on the eastern side of the railway to the Wadi Sheria. He aimed to bring the Australian Mounted Division into touch with the Anzac Mounted Division as soon as possible. By 8:50, the Australian Mounted Division, consisting of the 4th Light Horse and the 5th Mounted Brigade, was approaching Tel El Sheria, while the Anzac Mounted Division was deployed to the west of Kh. El-Bakr. However, plans for Desert Mounted Corps advance on the 7th of November were delayed by the check to the Londoners on the slope beyond Sheria. Chauvel ordered the 4th Light Horse and 5th Mounted Brigades to clear the enemy from the front of the 60th Division. They were to advance through the Londoners, to make a mounted charge directly on the front of the Ottoman rearguard position, rather than a flank attack. The 11th Light Horse Regiment had moved out to take up a line from Kh. Barata to the Wadi El Kirkati by 10 o'clock, with the 12th Light Horse Regiment on the right extending the line to the Wadi Barata. At 10:15 Chauvel ordered Hodgson to move with centre on Kh. Beauty to G23 Central. Chauvel gave Hodgson his exact line of advance, a definite axis of advance and objective against a very hard section, through defined squares on the map of operations, with his center on a mud hut at Khuweife.Ha, on the ridge behind the Turkish line of defenses, but a delay allowed the Ottoman rearguard to strengthen the position before the charge began. The direction of this advance had been laid down by the Egyptian Expeditionary Force General Staff in a letter written at 11:07 on the 4th of November. The orders for the 20th Corps and Desert Mounted Corps attacks on the 6th of November included an advance by the 20th Corps on the line Kh. Beauty-Ha, Sheria, Kh. Khuweilfe. The two objectives of this advance were to push the enemy rearguard back from the 60th Division, to give the infantry room to concentrate, and to enable the Australian Mounted Division to gain touch with the Anzac Mounted Division. Battle. Just before 11 o'clock the leading squadrons of the 11th Light Horse Regiment reached Tel El Sheria, where a conference was called by the 4th Light Horse Brigade commander, when orders were issued for an attack on their strong horseshoe position. The 4th Light Horse Brigade had been ordered to cross the Wadi Mounted and attack Khuweife.Although in the direction of Zahilaka and Huj, with the 5th Mounted Brigade in support. See above. Detail of El Arish to Beersheba map showing the Sheria position and falls map 4. The 12th Light Horse Regiment moved up to within 1 mile of the Wadi Sheria to the east of Sheria, where orders were received at 12 o'clock to go into action north of Sheria to cover the reorganization of the infantry. While orders were being received, the horses were given a few minutes to have a drink in the wadi before they continued their approach. The 11th Light Horse Regiment, commanded by Major P. J. Bailey, advanced on the left, with the 12th Light Horse Regiment, commanded by Lieutenant Colonel D. Cameron, on the right, had ridden towards the wadi, crossing with shrapnel bursting over the trotting horses. Then leading squadrons cantered up the steep tracks on the other side of the wadi into machine gun and heavy rifle fire at effective range. At 12:45, the 12th Light Horse Regiment was held up by machine gun and rifle fire while the HAC battery shelled the Ottoman rearguard position, 0.5 miles north of Sheria. The regimental commander ordered one of his squadrons to dismount and the horses sent back, while the men advanced on foot. A second squadron, galloping forward about 500 yards, also dismounted and began firing the rifles at the rearguard position. On the left, the lines of the 60th London Division were not far from the wadi, and here 2 squadrons of the 11th Light Horse Regiment advanced at the gallop in the face of the strong opposing fire. The regiment was attacking a redoubt held by machine guns and rifles, and covered from behind by a big gun. As usual, the approach was open, barren, absolutely barren of any cover. Our troop was ordered to charge the redoubt. The officer led his men straight in at the gallop, and 1 man only returned, who was wounded in the charge, and wheeled off back to his own lines. A purely frontal attack was held up under very heavy fire when the order was given to dismount and the led horses were galloped to the rear. The 2 Light Horse Regiments continued their advance dismounted, but were only able to capture a few hundred yards in front of the 60th Division before they too were stopped by heavy Ottoman machine gun fire. They remained in this position during the remainder of the afternoon, although suffering strong counterattacks. Meanwhile, 1 troop of 21 men from the 11th Light Horse Regiment missed the signal, and continued to gallop up to and over the Ottoman trench, holding only bayonets. With the rifles still on the backs as they dismounted, the Ottoman soldiers opened fire at point-blank range, killing 11 men. About 12:30, a troop commanded by Lieutenant A. R. Brighty occupied a position that was strongly opposed by Ottoman machine guns, just at the junction of the small wadi which branches off towards the Wadi Kirkati running northwest. After Brighty's troop had galloped past them, the Ottoman defenders turned and fired at the light horsemen dismounting for action, when very heavy fire was opened on them from front and right and left and rear, almost annihilating the troop. On the left, Lieutenant Bartlett's troop came to assist with Hotchkiss and rifle fire when 1 German officer and 20 Ottoman infantry were hit. Brighty's troop suffered 11 killed and the 5 wounded included Brighty and Sergeant Thistlewaite and 1 trooper, who were the only ones to survive. By 1300 they were held up by heavy rifle and machine gun fire when Lieutenant Brighty's troop of the 11th Light Horse Regiment galloped over a trench, the occupants of which raised their hands, but opened fire again once the troop had passed, catching the troop in converging fire. The whole troop was killed or wounded except 2 troopers. Lieutenant Bartlett's troop came to assist with Hotchkiss and rifle fire, accounting for 1 German officer and 20 Ottoman soldiers. 1 man lay wounded just under the parapet, while a sergeant and 2 troopers managed to escape back to the infantry and light horse lines. All the riderless horses started grazing in between the 2 lines of combatants. Turks think this is her chance to collect some Australian remounts. We think otherwise. I organize a competition between the 2 right-hand guns to see who can knock off most Turks without hitting horses. The Turks don't get any remounts. At 1415, touch was established by the 11th Light Horse Regiment with the 4th Light Horse Brigade when the situation was reported, and support from machine guns and artillery was requested for the left flank. When the artillery starts shelling the Ottoman rearguard position, they also make it unpleasant for the wounded Australian, and he makes a run for it. Turks get him with MG fire when he's about halfway back to our lines. Padre and another fellow dash out to bring him in but are shot down. Padre Dunbar and the stretcher-bearer made a run for it. They reached the trooper and raised his shoulders. Simultaneously the 3 were hit. The wounded man was killed. The Padre was hit in the groin and abdomen, and the stretcher-bearer in the hand. The latter made a run for it and reached our lines without further hurt. No one could reach Captain Dunbar, who died of wounds before dusk. All along the track small mounds and a rough cross bear silent record to the fact that this land has once again been bought with blood. Capture of Sheria. Desert Mounted Corps reported at 1440 that the Australian Mounted Division was directed on Khuweife.Although and that the infantry fight was still progressing to the north of Sheria Hospital, 1 mile north of Tel El Sheria. It appeared the Ottoman defenders were reinforcing the line and bringing up an abandoned anti-aircraft gun at 1500. 20 minutes later, the 179th Brigade was approaching the left flank. Chauvel had ordered this infantry brigade, which had not taken part in the earlier fighting, to capture the strong Ottoman rearguard, which had stopped the combined light horse and infantry attacks. At 1700, an infantry brigade began to attack the same position the 11th Light Horse Regiment had been attacking from the south. As they moved across the open ground just south of the Wadi Sheria, heavy rifle and machine gun fire covered their advance. This attack relieved the situation, pushed back the Ottoman defenders, who retired as a consequence. The 2 14th and 2 15th London battalions moved across the Wadi Sheria at 1700 to attack with the bayonet, capturing the position just on dark. They captured the Ottoman rearguard position at Sheria and pushed them out of the high ground facing west. Suffered 24 casualties during this attack. Meanwhile, the 5th Mounted Brigade had taken cover in the Wadi Barata, east of and parallel to the railway, and in other tributaries of the Wadi Sheria towards the east. During the day, Fitzgerald sent a message to Australian Mounted Divisional Headquarters asking to advance to the right of the 4th Light Horse Brigade, to seek the gap found by the Anzac Mounted Division. At 1515 the 4th Light Horse Regiment was sent to K.H. Zara to join the 5th Mounted Brigade's attack on the position. At 1645 permission was received. Meanwhile, the 3rd Light Horse Brigade, which had watered at calm during the morning, had ridden about 12 miles from the southwest, via Imli and Urgaig, to be in the process of crossing the Wadi Sheria as the 5th Mounted Brigade, cantering in lines of squadrons, to begin their advance at 1720. However, the mounted brigade was overtaken by darkness, the sun having set at 16:47 and the moon, just past the last quarter, would not rise for some 7 hours. The leading regiment, the Gloucester Yeomanry, lost direction and was fired on from the west, so the brigade returned to the Wadi Barata. Meanwhile, the 3rd Light Horse Brigade advanced along the railway line to gain touch with the 2nd Light Horse Brigade at 19:30. The 4th Light Horse Brigade had been placed under orders of Desert Mounted Corps at 16:20. When the infantry took over at 1800, the brigade withdrew for the firing line, and all troops not actually in the front line were withdrawn to bivouac at 1900 south of the Wadi Sheria and east of the railway, the brigade having suffered 15 killed and 14 wounded. At 1830, orders were received from the 4th Light Horse Brigade to withdraw and bivouac south of Sheria, which was reached an hour later. Killed in action were Chaplain Captain Dunbar and 12 troopers. Major Vernon, Lieutenant Briety and 12 troopers were wounded, while 19 horses were killed and 3 wounded. The 12 wounded, who arrived after dark at the 4th Light Horse Field Ambulance, continued to be treated until midnight, by which time the field ambulance was out of contact with the brigade, divisional headquarters and the casualty clearing station. At 1900, the 12th Light Horse Regiment commenced watering in the Wadi Sheria, where engineers had set up canvas troughs etc., pumping the water from holes sunk in the soakage. The regiment finished watering at 2200 and bivouacked 1 mile south of the Wadi Sheria on the east side of the railway. 1 trooper was killed in action during the day. Aftermath: the Ottoman 22nd Corps was not defeated, but skillfully conducted a tactical retreat, demonstrating both operational and tactical mobility. The Yildirim Army Group had marched through the night, to gain distance and time to establish a light entrenched line, behind which they resisted the EEF advance all day. The further withdrawals were aided by the falling back on the lines of communication, including railways, to eventually occupy strongly entrenched defences in the Judean Hills, while the sacrifice of the Ottoman rearguard delayed the pursuit and saved the Ottoman defenders from encirclement and destruction. The Gaza-Beersheba line was eventually completely overrun and 12,000 Ottoman soldiers would be captured. Meanwhile, at 6 o'clock on the 8th of November, the 4th Light Horse Brigade horses were watered at the Sheria water tower and rations and forage issued. Orders were received at 7:30 for the brigade to advance at 9 o'clock in a northerly direction up the Wadi Suda. After briefly halting at 1300, they reached Huj at 1730, while a regimental escort sent back for the rations wagons arrived at 2 o'clock on the 9th of November. The pursuit by the ANZAC and Australian mounted divisions north across the Southern Palestine maritime plain eventually ended some 50 miles north, after the Ottoman line of defense had been broken at Sheria. By the 9th of December, the EEF advance would take them to Jerusalem. Citations